These are the 15 UK cities that British residents are leaving in record numbers. Not to emigrate, but to relocate somewhere else in their own country. London alone shed roughly 129,000 more people to the rest of the UK than it pulled in during a single year. Almost every city on this list still appears to be growing on paper, and that's the part nobody talks about. International migration fills the gap that departing British residents leave behind, which means the headline figures mask what's actually happening underneath. None of this is about immigration. Families, professionals, and retirees are staring at their city, running the numbers, and choosing to go because of council bankruptcies, collapsing services, housing costs that swallow half a wage packet, rising crime, deepening deprivation, or just that slow grinding sense that the place they live in stopped working the way it used to. We're covering all 15 cities. If you're planning a move, looking at property, or just want to know whether your postcode carries more risk than you realise, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and stick around to the end because number 1 on this list will change how you think about the most famous city in the world. Number 15, Sunderland. Sunderland has one massive employer holding the entire city together, and that's Nissan, the UK's largest car plant with 6,000 direct employees and roughly 30,000 more in the supply chain. They built over 273,000 cars in 2025 and just invested £450 million in a new electric Leaf. Sounds like a success story until you read the fine print. Centre for Cities published an analysis that went straight for the throat, saying Nissan had replicated rather than reinvented Sunderland's economy, swapping pickaxes for the production line. All the high-skill R&D jobs stayed down in London and Bedfordshire. Only 75 R&D positions were safeguarded compared to thousands of assembly roles. Average salary here sits at £28,127, nearly 16% below the national average. The population barely grew by 1,265 across an entire decade. Between 2007 and 2012, it actually shrank, one of only 2 UK cities to manage that. And the young people keep leaving, which means the over 65 share climbed from 17% to 20.5% in a decade. And ONS projects it'll hit 25% by 2047. The last shipyard closed in 1988 and the last coal mine shut down in 1993. Housing is £147,000 on average, the cheapest metropolitan district in England, and flat prices rose just 0.5% in 10 years. You could buy a flat in Sunderland, wait a decade, and not be able to afford a decent meal out with the profit. Business Secretary Peter Kyle called it the beating heart of the UK's automotive industry. Maybe so, but a heart running on one artery doesn't tend to last. And if you think one industry dependence is bad, wait until you see the crime numbers on the next city. Number 14, Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough looks like it's booming, up 8.5% population growth since mid-2021, until you realise every single person added came through international migration. The domestic picture has been a slow drain since 1981, with 6,900 fewer British residents than 4 decades ago. Cleveland Police carries the highest overall crime rate of any police force area in England and Wales at 122.1 per 1,000 people. Middlesbrough itself sits at 129.92, which is 96% above the national average. It holds the number 1 ranking nationally for criminal damage, arson and burglary. Mayor Chris Cook didn't sugarcoat it when he said, "Our big disappointment was crime. Middlesbrough went from 15th worst LA in 2019 to 2nd worst in 2025. Average salary, £29,500. Child poverty, 31.8%. And here's the number that should stop you in your tracks. 52% of children who are in care in Middlesbrough end up with criminal convictions by age 24. Let that land for a second. The big hope is Teesworks, the UK's largest industrial zone built on the old SS1 Steelworks site that closed in 2015 and devastated the area. There's a £950 million wind monopile facility and a net zero Teesside power project in the pipeline. But controversy followed when a 2021 deal tipped the site to 90% private control. BP pulled out of its hydrogen project, and the combined authority received a best value notice in April 2025. Picture this. You live in Middlesbrough, you pay £2,488 a year in council tax, well above the England average. Your salary sits 12% below the national figure. Crime is nearly double the norm, and the biggest redevelopment project in the area just became mostly privately owned. You start to understand why the removal vans keep rolling. Number 13. Blackpool. The most deprived district in England. That's not an opinion, that's the index of multiple deprivation. 2025 straight from the Ministry of Housing. 7 of Blackpool's neighbourhoods rank in the national top 10 for deprivation. 7. Male life expectancy here is 73.7 years, the lowest anywhere in England. Councillor John Bolton put it bluntly, statistics show men in Blackpool will live 10 years less than men in Hampshire. Drug deaths run at almost 4 times the England average and climbed 50% over the past decade. The suicide rate is the 6th highest in England. Child poverty hits 32.9%. The population actually fell between 2011 and 2021, and deaths outstripped births by a wide margin, 1,995 against 1,438 in a single year. Migration barely keeps the total from sliding further. Crime sits at 213 per 1,000, with antisocial behaviour at 284% of the national average, ranked first out of 99 postcode areas. Employment stands at just 62%, well below the national 75.7%, and Blackpool has the lowest educational attainment in England. Housing is cheap at £136,000 on average, and that cheapness feeds the cycle. For years, the dumping ground label has followed Blackpool as people from other areas get placed in cheap bed and breakfasts, often carrying pre-existing health conditions, which drives up demand for services and deepens the deprivation numbers even further. There's investment arriving. A new DWP office brought 3,000 civil servants in June 2025. An MOD office will add 1,100 workers by 2027, and there's a planned Silicon Sands tech campus at the airport. But decades of decline don't reverse on one business park and a government office. Imagine walking down the Golden Mile past the arcades, the tower lit up behind you, tourists everywhere, candy floss and chips in the air. Looks alive. Then you check the census, the health data, and the crime stats, and you realise the postcard version and the lived version are 2 completely different places. And if you think Blackpool's health numbers are grim, the next city has something researchers can't even fully explain. Number 12. Glasgow. Glasgow carries the lowest life expectancy of any UK city. Males at 73.0 years, females at 78.2. 1 in 4 Glasgow men die before reaching 65. And here's the part that has baffled researchers for years. Premature mortality in Glasgow runs 30% higher than in equally deprived cities like Liverpool and Manchester, and nobody can fully explain why. They call it the Glasgow effect. The theories include the shock of 1980s deindustrialisation, mass housing clearances in the 1960s and 70s that ripped entire communities apart and dumped them in new towns, concentrated poverty, and what researchers describe as policy vulnerability. Glasgow's drug death rate hits 44.4 per 100,000, almost double Scotland's rate, and Scotland holds the highest drug death rate in Europe. The UK's first safer drug consumption facility opened here in January 2025. But Glasgow also pulled off one of the most dramatic crime turnarounds in European history. Homicides collapsed from 34 to just 7 in a decade, an 80% fall. The city once earned the label Murder Capital of Europe. Scotland's Violence Reduction Unit, established in 2005, took a public health approach that became a model studied worldwide. Economically, something genuinely interesting is happening. Workplace jobs climbed 15.9% between 2012 and 2022. Science and tech roles more than doubled from 21,700 to 45,300. And Glasgow now holds the third largest GDP per capita in the UK, behind Edinburgh and London. Barclays, JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley all run operations here. Housing averages £189,000, and the council settled £770 million in equal pay claims, the largest in UK local government history, after 8,000 women, including cleaners, caterers and carers, walked out on strike in 2018. Glasgow is a city where the worst health outcomes in Britain sit right next to genuine economic growth and collapsing violence. The employment gap between Glasgow and Scotland has effectively vanished. But the Glasgow effect keeps ticking, and until it breaks, people who can leave tend to do exactly that. Number 11. Nottingham. Only 24.23% of Nottingham residents own their home, over 3/4 rent. The national average is around 63%. That single number tells you more about Nottingham than a paragraph of statistics ever could. Two events in late 2023 reshaped how the entire country sees this city. On June 13, 2023, Valdo Calacane fatally stabbed two 19-year-old university students, Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, along with school caretaker Ian Coates, then drove a stolen van into pedestrians. O'Malley Kumar was posthumously awarded the George Medal in October 2025. The damage to the city's reputation took hold immediately. 5 months later, on November 29, 2023, the council issued a Section 114 notice, effectively declaring bankruptcy. The backstory involved Robin Hood Energy, a council-run energy company launched in 2015 that closed in 2020 after losing £38 million, combined with unlawfully diverted housing revenue account funds that triggered a separate Section 114 back in December 2021. General fund debt dropped from £827 million to £292 million by early 2026, and the financial position earned the description of improving from terminal to critical. Not exactly a slogan you'd put on a welcome sign, Sir Stephen Houghton, chair of Sagoma, framed it. The funding model is completely broken. Councils are operating with a spending power 19% lower in real terms compared to 2010 to 11. For Nottingham, it is 28%. Crime rate data ranks Nottingham as the most dangerous major city in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And the old Shottingham nickname still lingers. Deprivation places it 11th worst local authority in England. Genuine assets do exist here, from Boots headquarters to Experian and Games Workshop, 2 universities with roughly 70,000 students, a UNESCO City of Literature tag, and one of the UK's few tram systems. None of it climbs over the wall that bankruptcy, a stabbing spree, and a crime reputation have built around the city's image. And that pattern, where real investment can't outrun bad headlines, is about to repeat itself. Number 10. Hull. Hull lost a net 3,660 through internal migration in a single year, but the levers don't go far. Most head to Beverley, Cottingham, Kirkella suburbs just outside Hull's tight city boundary. Nobody hates Hull. They want a bigger garden and a quieter street, and the problem is that every person who crosses that line takes their council tax with them. At £132,540, the average house price counts among England's cheapest, and rent averages £639, roughly half the national figure. None of that cheapness translates into prosperity. Wages land 18% below the England average. 38.2% of children live in low-income families against a national 21.8%, and 42% of neighbourhoods sit in the most deprived 10% nationally. Here's something most people don't know. 90% of Hull lies below high tide level, making it the UK's second most vulnerable city to flooding. Major floods in 2007 and 2013 hit over 11,000 properties, and more than £200 million went into flood risk reduction after that. Hull historically topped every worst places to live list going. And then the 2017 City of Culture happened. 5.3 million audience visits, £220 million in investment, 800 new jobs. Time Out named Hull the second best UK destination in 2024. Professor Franco Bianchini confirmed it. There is no doubt that since Hull 2017, the city's image has changed for the better, both within Hull and externally. The legacy earned the label profound but somewhat fragile, and that phrase captures Hull perfectly. Image shifted, but wages didn't. Perception improved, but deprivation stayed. The culture came and the culture was brilliant, and then the cameras left and the structural problems were still there. If you thought an affordable city with flooding risk was a tough sell, the next one is the least affordable city in the UK, and yes, people are still leaving. Number 9. Oxford. Oxford, dreaming spires, world-class university, booming biotech, lost a net 4,927 people through internal migration in 1 year, and the reason fits on a single line. House prices exceed 15 times the average salary. Oxford City Council published that figure themselves, 15 times. Average house price, £481,000. Detached homes average over £1 million. Monthly rent, £1,923, nearly double the national average and climbing 6.5% a year. Only 45.3% of residents own their home compared to 61.3% for England, and 1 in 4 children live below the poverty line after housing costs. Oxford also became the global flashpoint for the 15-minute city conspiracy theory in 2022 and 2023. The actual proposal involved traffic filters on 6 roads, with residents getting 100 free driving days per year. Online misinformation twisted that into claims people would be physically confined to zones. Protests in February of 2023 drew hundreds, including Lawrence Fox and Right Said Fred, and Jordan Peterson weighed in, calling the planners idiot tyrannical bureaucrats. A temporary congestion charge launched in October 2025 with the full trial set for August 2026. Average salary sits nearly 12% above the national average at £37,341, and the city's Golden Triangle ranks among Europe's strongest innovation ecosystems across biotech, pharma, AI, and quantum computing. BMW's mini plant at Cowley employs around 4,000 workers, down from a peak of 28,000 in the 1960s. Council tax band D, with all precepts, reaches roughly £2,650. Picture this. You work in one of the most productive economies in the country. Your salary beats the national average by 12%. You still cannot afford to buy a home in the city where you work. You commute in from somewhere cheaper, or you pack up and leave. And that's exactly what nearly 5,000 people did in a single year. The residents leaving Oxford aren't failing. They're being priced out of a city that profits from their work but won't house them. Number 8. Manchester. Manchester spent 3 decades being the poster child for northern regeneration. Hundreds of millions invested. Media City UK, the BBC hub, a sporting and cultural scene with global pull. And British residents keep walking out the door with a net internal migration of negative 4,881, offset only by nearly 20,000 international arrivals. Crime sits at 164.2 per 1,000, the highest rate in Greater Manchester, and 6% of all knife crime nationwide gets recorded here. Unemployment at 6% runs above the national 4%, and Manchester is the 6th most deprived local authority in England. But here's the story that doesn't get told enough, and it's the one that actually explains the exodus. A Commonwealth think tank study found that in the 5 most gentrified wards of Manchester and Salford, Ordsall, Ancoats and Beswick and Hume, more than 60% of residents moved away within 10 years. Social housing came down, luxury developments went up, owned by overseas funds and private equity firms. When people talk about residents leaving Manchester, a big chunk of that is people being pushed out of neighbourhoods that got regenerated without them. The skyline looks better, the cranes keep rising, and the people who lived there before those cranes arrived are scattered across Greater Manchester or gone entirely. Average house price, £258,000, rising 5.7%, well above the national rate. Rent, £1,343 a month. Council tax. Band D, £2,183. Centre for Cities data shows the productivity gap with London narrowing, with Manchester growing 3 to 4 times the UK rate since 2019. Imagine living in Hume 15 years ago. Your rent is manageable, your community is tight, the corner shop knows your order. Then the cranes arrive, your block comes down, and a glass tower goes up with apartments marketed to investors in Singapore. You can't afford a flat in your own neighbourhood anymore, so you move out to Wigan or Bolton, and a headline says, "Manchester is thriving." It is thriving, just not for you. Number 7. Portsmouth. Britain's only island city, Portsea Island, 40 square kilometres, the most densely populated city outside London, at over 5,100 people per square kilometre. And families who outgrow their home have no choice but to leave the city boundary because the island literally cannot expand. Net internal migration, negative 5,519, a 30% outflow. The economy grew up around the Royal Navy, which peaked at 40,000 dockyard jobs and now sits at roughly 10,000, a 75% drop. Two-thirds of the Royal Navy's surface fleet still operates from here, including HMS Queen Elizabeth, but the economic base narrowed over decades. Former council leader Donna Jones captured it perfectly. Our average house prices, average employment, average education is much lower than the remainder of the southeast. That's the whole story in one sentence. A southern city carrying northern deprivation levels, sitting on the wealthy south coast without sharing in the wealth. Average house price, £249,000, actually falling 2.7% when most of the country rose. Crime runs 62% above the southeast average, with weapons possession at 2.06 times the national figure. 25,000 university students drive up rental demand and create friction over shared houses and transient populations. There's over £2 billion invested or committed to infrastructure. Gunwharf Quays turned old naval storage into a major leisure centre, and well-being scores come in above the national average. None of that changes the physics. When your city sits on an island with fixed edges and your family needs an extra bedroom, you don't have a choice. You leave. And if geography forces people out of Portsmouth, wait until you see what economics does to Bradford. Number 6. Bradford. 5th largest metropolitan borough in England at 563,600 people, with a median age of 36.9 and over 22% of the population aged under 15. Bradford is young. Bradford is affordable. £187,000 average house price and £728 monthly rent. And Bradford is bleeding residents, negative 5,628 through internal migration. Because affordability means nothing when the quality doesn't match. Unemployment sits at 8.4%. Nearly 50% of children in Bradford East and West live in poverty. The gap between the most and least deprived areas stretches wider than anywhere else in the country. From Ilkley to Manningham, same council, different universe. Crime reaches 137 per 1,000, the highest postcode area rate in England, with the City Ward recording 373 per 1,000, while Wharfdale sits at just 35.2. Council debt is headed toward £1 billion by 2030, and the council imposed a 9.99% tax increase, the steepest in England. One resident called Kathy told GB News, "I think they've destroyed this city, absolutely destroyed it, and now we're having to pay for it all." Council leader Susan Hinchcliffe responded, "Over the last 14 years, £350 million was cut in government grant to Bradford." Winning the 2025 UK City of Culture brought roughly 1,000 events, £15 million in government investment, and expectations of 3.3 million additional visitors. Though the Irish Times noted the council-backed Bradford Live venue lies empty because the council has been unable to find an operator. During the August 2024 far-right riots that struck Hull and Rotherham, Bradford stayed calm and sent its police to help other cities, widely seen as evidence of community cohesion. The Demos PwC Good Growth Index ranked Bradford second worst in the country. Right moves happy at home. Index ranked it second unhappiest. Young population, cheap housing, a city of culture year, and still the vans keep pulling away. The ingredients are there. Nobody's managed to cook with them yet. Number 5. Coventry. A net 6,865 left through internal migration, a 21% outflow, while population growth of 9,783 came entirely through immigration. Migration. Watch UK's analysis of ONS data described it as a product of immigration alone. And that's strange because Coventry has one of the strongest economic stories on this list. Jaguar Land Rover, the University of Warwick, a £300 million electric cab factory, a £150 million National Automotive Innovation Centre, a planned gigafactory that could bring 20,000 jobs, and crime falling 11.4% year on year. Deprivation improved from 59th most deprived in 2015 to 81st in 2019. So why leave a city that's actually getting better on paper? John Bradbury of The Specials answered that decades ago when he described watching Coventry go from a boomtown where his family prospered through to the collapse of the industry and the bottom falling out of family life. The Specials released Ghost Town in 1981. 44 years later, parts of Coventry's centre still feel like they're recovering from the combination of the Blitz and the industrial collapse that followed. Race hate crimes jumped by a third between September 2023 and 2024, cutting against the broader improvement. Average house price, £226,000. Rent, £1,016. Council tax band, D, around £2,171. Coventry's economic trajectory might be the strongest of any mid-sized city here, but trajectories and daily reality move at different speeds, and the daily reality hasn't caught up. Number 4. Luton. If you want to see urban exodus in its most concentrated form, Luton is the case study. 39% more people left than arrived, the worst proportional decline of any major UK location studied. That outflow tripled from negative 1,931 in 2013 to negative 6,932 by mid-2024. Average house price, £281,000. Affordability ratio, 9 times median earnings, worse than Leicester or Coventry. For a town that doesn't appear on anyone's dream destination list, that number hits different. The dominant employer and dominant controversy is London Luton Airport. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander approved a £2.4 billion expansion in April 2025, pushing capacity from 19 million to 32 million passengers, overruling planning inspectors who recommended refusal and concluded the public benefits do not outweigh the environmental harm. Ladecan Chair Andrew Lambourne warned, overall, there will be a huge degradation in the quality of life of the local people if the airport doubles its capacity yet again. Thousands of residents, Hertfordshire County Council and multiple district councils all opposed it. Proponents cited 11,000 new jobs. A judicial review got dismissed in December 2025, and the expansion moves forward regardless. Most leavers head to central Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire, areas with more space and greenery but still commutable. People aren't abandoning the region, they're abandoning Luton specifically. London sits just 30 miles away, the DART transit link operates, and a £243.8 million capital investment programme fills the pipeline. But when your own planning inspectors say no and the government overrules them, confidence takes a hit. And if Luton losing residents despite cheapish housing surprises you, Leicester's story involves billion-pound scandals and garment factories paying £2.50 an hour. Number 3. Leicester. A net 9,305 left through internal migration, triple the rate from 2013, and only 13,110 net international arrivals prevent outright population decline. Crime, 130 per 1,000, nearly 40% above the UK average. Unemployment, 7.9%. Median salary, £30,770, below the national figure. Over 40% of children in Leicester East live in poverty. And then the garment factory scandal blew the city apart. In July 2020, the Sunday Times revealed that workers in Leicester factories supplying Boohoo earned as little as £2 as £50 to £3.50 an hour, less than half the minimum wage, with no COVID protections. An estimated 1,000 to 1,500 factories employed over 10,000 garment workers, mostly South Asian migrants. £1 billion evaporated from Boohoo's market value in a single day. Operation Tacit, the multi-agency investigation that followed, visited over 250 factories and produced 0 prosecutions for modern slavery or minimum wage offences as of August 2021. 0. Community activist Tariq Islam told Business of Fashion, "When people are so vulnerable, they often don't even know that they're being exploited." The industry collapsed from roughly 700 factories to between 60 and 100 by 2025. The scandal fed into Britain's longest local COVID lockdown in the summer of 2020, right here in Leicester. Leicester City's 2016 Premier League title, the 2 universities, the National Space Centre, those are real assets, and the structural problems are real too. Surrounding Leicestershire absorbed 7,617 net internal migrants in 2021 to 22, confirming the familiar pattern. People cross the boundary, find better schools and safer streets, and keep their job. Same story as Hull, Bradford, and almost everywhere else on this list. If a mid-sized city losing 9,000 people sounds bad, wait until you hear what happened when Britain's second largest city went bankrupt. Number 2, Birmingham. Britain's second city, population roughly 1,157,000, and in the year to mid-2024, over 79,500 residents left. Net internal migration, negative 16,373. Over the decade to 2022, net outflow totaled 112,300. Without the 24,235 international arrivals, the largest single increase of any local authority, Birmingham would have shrunk by nearly 11,000 in a single year. And then, September 5th, 2023 happened. Birmingham City Council issued a Section 114 notice, and the UK's largest local authority effectively went bankrupt. An £87 million in-year budget deficit collided with an estimated £760 million equal pay liability tracing back to a 2012 Supreme Court ruling, a liability the council had spent 2 decades settling claims on without ever fixing the underlying pay inequality. On top of that came a failed Oracle IT system that burned through roughly £100 million, 2022 Commonwealth Games hosting at £184 million, 6 chief executives in 6 years, and a 36.3% real terms cut in spending power since 2010 to 11 against a sector average of 26%. Consequences landed hard, £149 million slashed from the budget, the largest cuts ever imposed on a UK local authority. Planned asset sales of £750 million included potential disposal of 54,000 council houses, the city's main library, museum and art gallery, and historic properties. Government commissioners moved in. Arts and cultural organisations lost their funding entirely, drawing criticism from Duran Duran members and comedian Joe Lycett. LGIU CEO Jonathan Carr West described the moment. To see the largest local authority in the country effectively declare bankruptcy is a sobering moment. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's response? It's not the government's job to bail out the council. Council tax rose 9.99%. Crime rate 111.1 per 1,000 with a homicide rate exceeding London's. Dead last for jobs in the Demos PwC Good Growth Index. Average house price £233,000. Unemployment 7.6%, nearly double the national average. HS2's terminus at Curzon Street is under construction and the rental market grew 7% since 2024. But none of that mattered to the hundreds of thousands of British residents who packed up and left over the past decade. Picture this. You've lived in Birmingham your whole life. Your grand's house is here, your school, your first job. Then the council goes bust, your bins stop getting collected on time, the library your kids use is on a list for potential sale, and your council tax jumps 10% to pay for decades of mismanagement you had nothing to do with. At what point do you stop saying, "This is home," and start looking at Solihull or Warwickshire? Birmingham's bankruptcy wasn't a sudden crisis. Decades of underfunding, mismanagement and political failure stacked up until the whole thing buckled. The people who could afford to leave had already gone. Number 1. London. And here we are, financial capital of Europe, cultural centre of the world, depending on your definition, home to roughly 9.1 million people, and the city that lost approximately 129,000 more residents to the rest of the UK than it attracted in a single year. That isn't a pandemic blip. London has bled population domestically every single year for over 2 decades running. The pre-COVID average sat around negative 104,000 per year between 2014 and 2019. COVID spiked it to negative 191,000 in the year to mid-2021. It came back down, but the structure underneath never changed. International migration, net positive 154,000, is the only reason the population grows at all. Average house price, £551,000, the only English region where prices actually fell in the year to October 2025. Monthly rent, £2,268 according to ONS, with Rightmove reporting asking rents of £2,736 in Greater London and Kensington and Chelsea, topping out at £3,616 per month. Renting eats 44% of the average wage, up from 40% 5 years ago. A 20% deposit on a first home requires £45,374. For low-income households, the average home represents roughly 25 years of income. Let that sink in. 25 years. Crime totalled 951,803 offences in 2024 to 25, with shoplifting surging 54%, theft from person up 41%, and roughly 80,000 mobile phones stolen in 2024, though violent offences with injury fell 15% and weapons possession dropped 20%. ULEZ went London-wide on 29th August 2023 at £12.50 per day, generated £224 million in a single year, and drove compliance to 96.2% by February 2024, while Blade Runners vandalised cameras in protest. The wealth exodus adds another dimension. Henley and Partners projected 16,500 high-net-worth individuals leaving the UK in 2025, many from London, driven by non-dom tax abolition and capital gains increases. ONS data shows 257,000 British citizens left the UK entirely in the year to December 2024. Londoners head for Surrey, Hertfordshire, Buckinghamshire, the Cotswolds, small affluent towns like Weybridge, Marlow and Harrogate. Hampton's data from 2024 shows Londoners bought 57,020 homes outside the capital, with the average leaver moving 33.1 miles and Brentwood in Essex seeing 47% of homes sold to Londoners, up from 23% in 2019. The wealthier ones go further, to Dubai, Paris, Amsterdam, Monaco and Singapore. Centre for Cities published Escape to the Country in March 2024 and concluded the pandemic exodus was temporary, writing, "The pandemic was a short-term impact which seems set to leave the longer-term trajectory unchanged." London's population has almost certainly recovered and surpassed its pre-pandemic peak. London is not dying, London is churning. British residents leave, international arrivals replace them. Young professionals arrive chasing careers, start families, move out for space, and the cycle has run for decades. The city works brilliantly for global capital, for the finance district, for the investors buying flats they'll never sleep in, for the 129,000 who left last year, for the families who can't reach a 2-bedroom flat, for the teachers and nurses priced out of the city they keep running, for the retirees whose pensions dissolve into rent, The statistical resilience of London offers nothing useful. The numbers say the city is fine. The removal vans say otherwise. If your city appeared on this list, drop a comment and tell us whether you're staying or going and where you'd move and why. If any of this shifted how you see your postcode, subscribe, because we cover this regularly with no spin, just the data and what it actually means. Thanks for watching.